Black Myth Wukong is one of the most surprising games I've played. Even with the amount of hype this game has had for literal years, it really does live up to it, and is seriously impressive for any studio. But this is Game Science's first major release, which is absurd since it has more quality than most AAA games that come out in the modern day. From the amazing graphics and visuals to the engaging combat, Black Myth Wukong truly is an amazing game, and, in my opinion, absolutely deserving of the Game of the Year title. Oh, and just in case if this still has to be said, this will be full of spoilers for the whole story, most of the bosses, etc., so you have been warned. Black Myth Wukong is based on the Chinese novel Journey to the West, which is about Sun Wukong, the Monkey King. Now, I have not read the book. I've watched a few videos on the basic gist of the story, but that is the extent of my knowledge, and it really showed in my playthrough. There are many different characters that I am certain appear in the books, or ones that are referenced, but I had no idea. For example, your companion for most of the game, Zhu Baji, is a major character in the novel, and I'm sure there's more characters, bosses, etc. that you meet in game that have a more significant role in the book. Does it mean that you can't enjoy the plot without knowing the lore? Absolutely not, but it will make it more enjoyable as you will be able to reference things and understand it more. So the actual plot of the game takes place after the events of the novel, which follows the player character as the Destined One. In the beginning, there is a really badass sequence where the actual Sun Wukong faces an army sent by the Celestial Court as he rejected to live there, so they are here to capture him and force him to return. You battle Erlang Shen, which is one of the earlier members who were sent to capture Sun Wukong, which is why he talks about a rematch, in which he ultimately wins, and Sun Wukong is then trapped in stone, but manages to split his power into 6 different relics which are scattered across China. The monkeys on the mountain aim to recover these relics so they can revive Sun Wukong, and then there is one, known as the Destined One, who sets out on the journey. Each relic has its own chapter. You go through the game, and at the end of each chapter, face the final boss and recover the relic. When you have recovered 5, you return to the mountain, you obtain Sun Wukong's armor and staff, and enter the stone. You find that it contains Sun Wukong's memories, and also that his mind, which is the last relic, was lost when he died, meaning that Sun Wukong can never be revived, but the Destined One is instead the one to become the new Sun Wukong. There are 2 endings to the game. The first is after the final boss, you wear the same circlet that bound Sun Wukong to the Celestial Court, and in a very Dark Souls-esque ending, you are now trapped in a rock and await a new Destined One to embark on the same journey. Or, if you alternatively defeated Erlang Shen before in a secret realm, you inherit Sun Wukong's memories and refuse to wear the circlet, meaning you will not be bound to the Celestial Court. Black Myth Wukong has a fairly generic plot. There's nothing really special about it. It's more about the mythology and understanding the novel that it's based on, but it can be easily understood for players with no knowledge of it. Black Myth Wukong's combat is kind of a mixture between like a Dark Souls 3 and God of War. It has the foundations of a Souls game, role-based combat, stamina bar, etc., but it plays very differently. It is very combo focused. Your attacks all land in combos which end with a bigger slam, which often staggers enemies. There is a skill in the skill tree which is pretty much essential, where normally if you dodge in the middle of a combo, the combo will restart. However, with this skill, you continue with whatever part of the attack you ended on, which makes it really smooth. There are also heavy attacks, where when you attack an enemy, you gain focus, which when the meter is full, you can do a charge attack, which stuns way easier and does a lot more damage. There are different stances you can use, and each have a unique charge attack. There's ones like a spear thrust, or one where you can stand on top of your staff high in the air and then slam it down. There's also little changes you can make to the combos through the skill tree. The perfect dodge is also really cool. When you dodge at the last possible second, you leave a little clone and time slows down. It looks really badass and feels so good when you chain them together during an enemy's combo. There are also spells which are really useful. The main ones are Immobilize, where you can stun an enemy for a pretty generous duration, where you are free to attack as much as you want. You have a Pluck of Many, where you can spawn little monkey clones to help you, and you also have Rock Solid, where you can turn to stone, which pretty much negates an enemy's attack. These and the combo focused combat make this game stand out from the typical Souls-like. You will always be wanting to complete your whole combo combo string and using spells whenever they are available. It's all about getting those charge attacks ready to deal the most damage and stagger the enemy. The combat is incredibly satisfying and was really surprising just how fun and engaging it is. The skill tree is also really useful. There is no leveling stats in this game. Everything comes from either new armor and weapons or the skill tree. You unlock new stances and changes to the combat, but can also upgrade things like damage and your health. The bosses are easily the best part of the game, and are actually quite shocking just how good they are. There are, to my knowledge, over 100 bosses in total, and it's definitely believable as, especially in the earlier chapters, you fight a boss and within 3 minutes you're fighting another one. You have these mini bosses that are more common, and then the final main ones at the end of chapters, and the standard of them all is really impressive. The lesser bosses are a bit more generic, however they have great designs and are really fun to fight, but the major story bosses are actually incredible. There is a great variety in fights, and they always find new innovations on the bosses to keep them unique, and they are really challenging but still fair. More than a few bosses took me multiple hours in this game, and I loved the fight so much as it was fully up to me to get the fights down. The Tiger Vanguard is the first kind of skill check boss. He is easily the hardest up until that point of the game, but the fight is so good. It's a badass fight visually, his combos are fun and fair. He's tricky but still leaves a lot of openings for your skill at that point in the game, and is overall a really cool and engaging fight. The Yellow Wind Sage is another really great boss, visually and mechanically. The second phase brings up a massive skeleton from the ground and you have to avoid it, and then the boss summons multiple clones to dodge, all while in this huge sandstorm. It's just such a cool boss, and the spectacle is always great with pretty much every boss, but it makes it even better when it's still a great fight mechanically. I'm not even going to try pronounce the dragon boss, but that is another great spectacle. The fight itself is a bit dull, but this is one of the coolest set pieces and visuals for a boss, I've thought. And then there are 3 bosses in the game that absolutely kicked my ass for hours, yet are 3 of probably the best bosses in the game. The 100-eyed Taoist master was so annoying originally. He has an absurd amount of health, does an absurd amount of damage, and can electrocute you. Then he has a second phase where your stamina is cut in half and you roll slower, so you can't be as aggressive. However, then he starts doing loads of AoEs and lightning attacks. It is really quite excessive, and that's what I kind of thought by the end of the game, where there were a few bosses that have second phases that are just that bit too far in one or two aspects. The boss was still really enjoyable, but it just felt so extreme as he has so much health and so many things going against you that a further hindered second phase really felt unnecessary. The Yashka King kicked my ass for far too long as well. The first phase was challenging enough and I spent way too long on that alone, so when that second phase showed up I knew it was over for me. Luckily there is a checkpoint so you don't need to do the first phase again, because that would be actual torture. It's another boss that does a lot of damage and its combos are really long. You either have to perfect dodge for it all or just outdistance it since they have such dragged out attacks. And finally is the final boss, the Great Sage's Broken Shell. The first phase is really good against the Stone Monkey, and when there is 2 of them they are balanced well and have a good synergy. Then the second phase where you fight Sun Wukong's shell is really great also. The first part you use his staff against him where you also don't lose any stamina. This phase is quite easy as you can kinda just spam him while avoiding a few moves, and the charge attack is very OP against him. Then the second part where he takes his staff back is when it picks up. He can do the same spells against you, he immobilizes you and can spawn clones. He also uses the charge attacks of all the stances you have acquired through the game. He also has these badass mid-fight stuns where, if caught in the essentially grab attack of this game, he beats you up for a bit, then yawns and tells you to get up so he can keep beating your ass. It's so cool and humiliating. Overall, it's a really solid fight and very fitting as the final boss. The bosses were genuinely quite shocking at just how good they are overall. There are a great range of fights visually and mechanically. These are genuinely hard fights where it's not down to bullshit, for the most part anyway, and are really engaging. The gameplay is most similar to Team Ninja's games like Neo, where you have the more linear level systems, in this case chapters, where you have a final boss and then you are transported to another region. There is a good variety of locations. You have a forest biome, a desert, a cave system, a lava area, and the final area Mount Huego, which is a more open space and you actually get to fly around it as it's like a mini open world. The levels are quite plain for the most part, sometimes with a different path just leading to through a chest or an item, but sometimes there is a complete new area which has a new boss or a whole new secret. There is always either an item to collect or a mini boss to fight, etc., making exploration feel rewarding. So all in all, Black Myth Wukong is one of the most surprising games I've played. It is not a masterpiece or one of the best games of all time, but for it being the developer's first game and the hype behind it for literal years, it has absolutely blown me away with the game's stellar graphics, engaging and never dull combat, and especially the incredible boss design and huge roster that only gets better as the game goes on. Black Myth Wukong is a great game and absolutely deserves a Game of the Year title this year. It will be an absolute robbery if it does not win. However, only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching. I genuinely appreciate it so much. If you could like and subscribe, that'd be really appreciated as well. Thanks so much again, and I'll see you in the next one.